Thank you so much for joining me, James. The upcoming ISO 9001 revision is such an important topic, and I'm really looking forward to discussing it with you today. Let's get started. Could you tell us who you are and about your role within the Amtivo Group, please?
Yeah, absolutely, Izzy. I'm James Gibb. I'm technical manager within the Amtivo governance team. So realistically, what that means is that I'm responsible for supporting the Amtivo businesses in both gaining and maintaining our global accreditations. I also perform management system audits, and I'm a qualified lead auditor for, amongst other standards, ISO 9001.
So, who decides what standards get revised and actually when they get revised?
Every ISO standard is ultimately owned by a technical committee that sits within the structure of ISO. Now, in the case of ISO 9001, that is technical committee number 176. And actually, for ISO 9001, there's even a subcommittee, which is subcommittee 2. So, what happens is that the committee can choose to initiate what they call a systematic review at any point, or automatically the actual ISO back office systems will just automatically trigger this systematic review every 5 years. Now, a systematic review doesn't mean a revision. It means we will have a look at that standard and decide, is it actually suitable? Does it need some form of review or revision? And if that systematic review concludes that, yes, we do need to make a revision, they would then go ahead and commence that process.
How do you know what the latest ISO 9001 revision is?
Well, the ISO standards are all available on the International Standard Organization for Standards website under their digital catalog. So you can always go and check directly on the ISO website, which I suspect there'll be a link in the video too. And the standard that you're accessing will always have a year or a version date within its title. Now, the reason why I would always suggest you go directly to the ISO site is because other national standards bodies may have a different date shown at the end, because the process for an international standard is it's first generated by ISO, then it's reviewed by a regional group, and then final a national standards body. So, for example, the Estonian standards body may take a little time to issue a standard, so it may have a different year on it.
Tell us about the upcoming ISO 9001 2026 revision. Do we know why ISO 9001 is being revised?
Well, in the middle of 2023, the systematic review ultimately concluded that there was the need for revision of ISO 9001. It was quite unusual that it did conclude this, because the national member associations for ISO standards kind of came to a stalemate where there wasn't a consensus to actually make the changes. But because the standard was coming up 8 years old at that point, the committee determined that with the changes that had been made to the harmonized structure for management system standards, it was appropriate to make that revision. So there was not really any hard driver to make that revision beyond ISO's own internal changes of structure.
Do we know what areas might be looked at or what the changes might include, or is it just speculation at the moment?
Well, the draft version, or the DIS, has actually been widely circulated through all the national standards bodies for comment. So you can access that in the UK, for example, through the BSI British Standards portal. That draft standard gives you an idea of what the drafting committee is thinking at the moment. It's very difficult to speculate on what any changes may be, because a draft standard is still an early stage. We won't necessarily have real confidence until we get to what's referred to as the final draft, or the FDIS version of the standard.
Mm-hmm.
What I can tell you for certain is that following the changes that ISO made in 2019 to their directive for documenting standards and the level that's referred to as Annex SL, they updated their harmonized structure for management system standards. So there has been very minor structural changes that will be propagated through all of the different ISO standards. It doesn't necessarily include any additional requirements for certified clients, but what it does do is it moves around requirements within the standard and adds further clarity. So the only thing we really know for certain is that there will be changes.
When will we find out more about the ISO 9001 2026 revision?
Okay, so the DIS version has just completed a voting stage or a balloting stage. So what that means is that all of the national standards bodies around the world have put forward their vote as to whether we want it to move to the next step or not. Now, my information is it has passed that vote, so it will move to what's referred to as the FDIS. Exactly when that will happen, it's not clear, because there are several hundred comments from those national standards bodies that need to be considered by the drafting committee. Some of them will be very simple, like editorial, there should be a full stop here, but some of them will be of substance that may or may not change a requirement. So until those comments have all been discharged and the FDIS is available, we won't really know very much, because all of that is managed at the committee level and not widely made available. What you can do, however, is go onto the ISO website and you can access the TC 176 Subcommittee 2 work program, so you can see as the standard develops and moves forward. And of course, you can also keep current with what's going on by either subscribing to Amtivo's newsletter or connecting through the website.
What's the proposed timeline for the ISO 9001 revision being finalised and published?
Well, if you look at the subcommittee work programme page, they have a target for September 2026 as being the publication date. However, that is only a target date. I'm sure you can appreciate when you've got 150 plus national standards organisations all being involved in discussing things, it doesn't happen quickly. The fact there's a lot of comments also means that it's quite possible that that target date is likely to slip.
When a standard is revised, what are the timelines for companies transitioning their current certificates?
If you already are operating a certified quality management system following the ISO 9000, in effect, for the immediate future, that will remain valid with no need to make any changes. The International Accreditation Forum, who oversee global accredited certification, they will give advice to the regional accreditation groups, who will then cascade that advice down to national accreditation groups, the likes of UCAS and INAB, and their guidance will tell us the timeframes for everything. Now, until they publish that document, all we can really do is make a best guess as to what that will say. Now, what I can tell you is, based upon the published guidelines that IAF have for determining the document that determines how things transition, is that there will be a requirement first for Amtivo to actually complete our own updates and transition of accreditation to demonstrate to the likes of UCAS and INAB that we can effectively audit against the requirements of the new standard. Once we've completed that, then we are in a position to provide auditing service to audit what clients have done with regards to how they transition their systems. Now, in the past, the timescale for clients to be complete on their transition has been 3 years from the date of publication of a standard. But obviously that depends upon how significant the changes are in the standards, and also how well progressed different global accreditation bodies are as well. It's pretty certain that for existing certified clients, you're going to have the opportunity to transition in a timely and compliant manner over the course of between 2 and 3 years. So there's no immediate urgency for you to be setting fire to your systems and starting again.
What should organisations be doing now to prepare as the ISO 9001 revision progresses?
Well, there's a few things that you can do as a certified organisation. The first one would be is to get some bookmarks on your internet browser so that you can keep track of what's happening at ISO level. Obviously, subscribe to the Amtivo newsletter, and we'll keep you up to date on that. Once the standard is actually published, you'll be able to access a digital copy either directly through ISO or through whichever national standards body you want to use. Do keep in mind, before the full version is issued, there will be this FDIS, this final draft. It's always a risk trying to do things based upon the final draft because the clue is in the name, it's still a draft. So it is essential, though, for you to get a copy of the final published standard, because that's how you can then perform your initial gap analysis and start to plan how to fill the gaps in. It's worth keeping in mind that there are not changes of substance that we're aware of at the moment. So if you are running a truly effective and high performing quality management system, you may find there's very little for you to do to transition beyond demonstrating the good things that you're already doing.
Fantastic. Well, that's been really insightful, James. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I'm sure we'll catch up again, and I look forward to it as these revisions continue to develop. Thank you so much.